oh my goodness, am I going to do this for the next 30 years of my life? Literally do the same thing. Always like at the back of class, it's like, man, I was meant for more than just calculus. I was meant for more than just this stupid math class, right? And Jack Ma called it out. He called me out. He was like, you want to be like everybody else? Follow the same path as you were taking yesterday because you're too scared to take risks. I just jumped into the deep dark ocean of entrepreneurship. I just couldn't control my emotions. It was my first very, very much failure as a CEO, as a co-founder of a startup. And I just cried. I just needed a minute. I just needed a moment in front of them. And I knew that was my window. I didn't have money, right? So I was sneaking around all these conferences. Any moment you could get caught or evicted. Have to enter a conference knowing exactly who you are there to talk to. You must go there knowing, hi, I know you, so and so. I'm here to pitch you something. So you need to be very, very targeted in your approach.
Karl Mak, co-founder and CEO of Hepmil Media Group, the digital media powerhouse with a reach spanning over 50 million weekly across Southeast Asia. What started as a simple meme page created at the back of his university classroom with one of his best friends back in 2012 to become the cultural phenomenon they are today. This is You Make It Look Easy with Karl Mak. Morning, Karl.
Morning.
Thanks for coming on. I want to start off by asking you a question. We see Hepmil Media, we see SGAG, we see Karl as the founder, as the CEO in charge. How would someone describe Karl to me?
I think the way that I have tried to build my career and my life is, I think, to be kind as much as I can, to be kind, to be, I think, encouraging to people, to help people as much as I can, to do what I can to support others that need support. I think if people describe me that way, then I would have said maybe that is success to me, right? So I think I've tried to live my life that way.
Kind. Today, I think I want to go through kind of 3 key milestones in this storyline. The first is, of course, before Hepmil. Second is the founding of it. Third is, the maturity of Hepmil and what's after. And I want to go into a few interesting episodes and milestones that I've read about and heard about. And I wanted to take how did, at the point in state, what kind of like questions were going through your mind? How do you come to certain decisions? Maybe pull back the years 10, 15 years ago. I read that initially you were actually an up-and-coming athlete. You were almost training and, trialing for the swimming national team. But around 12, your mom decided to pull you out for something that you've been training so hard on and perhaps having aspirations for, doing that as a career. What was going through your mind having to suddenly train so much and then give it all up?
I started swimming when I was about 4 or 5 because my mom thought it was a good skill. Back in the 90s, there was this phenomenon to go through these life-saving courses, bronze, silver, gold. You kind of wear pajamas, jump into the pool, blow bubbles into your pants, and try to stay afloat, right? And then somehow, we just kept swimming. By 12 years old, I was kind of swimming competitively in the primary school division in Singapore. And I was the gold medalist for the 50-meter and 100-meter breast event. So I didn't know what that means, right? But I was competing against other primary schoolers and I was first in that event. Yep. So naturally, the next progression from my coach was kind of, hey, go for the national swim trials after PSLE. That's when you definitely get some spot in there because I already won gold for the event. And why not evaluate the schools together with your PSLE score, right? So I went for the trials and got in, and my PSLE score came in right below the admission to ACSI, which was the school that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so naturally there was a conversation from the coaches to be like, hey, it's okay. You missed by like 6 points. We can go through a sports admission scheme like a DSA program. Come swim for us, right? So I received 2 offers, one from ACSI, one from SGAG. And my mom was like, what does this mean, right? So they basically said by 15, which is Sec 3, I was expected to go for my first SEA Games. So we would train from 13 to 15 intensively every morning at Toa Payoh. until we go for SEA Games, right? And I was a kid, and I didn't know what that meant. Sounds cool, daunting, right? But my mom was like, "No, I'm gonna pull you out of swimming. You've been swimming well, and you've been swimming fine, but I'm gonna put you into a school that has no swimming, because I didn't want you to become a professional swimmer. I didn't want you to sort of have a career where by mid-20s, late-20s, you're retired." So that was her thinking. I was a bit confused because I had been training a lot for it. I didn't actually enjoy it, I think. I just did it because I had no choice. In fact, there were obviously moments as a child where you don't want to do what your mom tells you to do. No choice. I was kind of good at it accidentally, but I wouldn't say it was my life and my passion. So I was actually a bit frustrated because it's like, then what do I do now, right? So I ended up joining basketball because I was really tall. I was swimming so much, my body was just stretched out. And I was like 175 cm at 13 years old. So the basketball coach looked at me and was like, "Hey, you know how to shoot a ball?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Why don't you try?" So I was decently athletic and decided to just be a good kid, follow my mom, didn't know how to say no, and stopped swimming after that.
So you're saying there was a chance that Karl could have been on the podium besides Joseph Schooling 10 years later, and we'll be celebrating your gold medalist.
I don't think so. I was okay at it at a young age, but I don't think I enjoyed it enough to be like an Olympic athlete. I was just accidentally good at it, kind of forced by my mom. It's not like a natural talent that I have, right? So it's okay. I don't mind it. I think it was the right call actually by my mom. If not, I wouldn't be doing this today. So looking back, it was kind of a right move by her.
Could you understand the decision when you were 12, 13 years old? Like before that, training so hard for it, and then suddenly off a switch, this is not what you're going to be doing. Here's another path.
I guess I was a little bit frustrated, I would say. If I remember, I was a little bit frustrated, a little bit confused. It's like, I've been swimming so much and suddenly I don't have to swim? I was like, so what am I going to do? Right? So she was like, you can pick any sport you want, right? Like do anything. And I guess my mom especially has been very supportive like that. She will kind of nudge me in a direction, but she won't tell me what I need to do. So for me, it was like, okay, I'll just pick basketball because it seemed like a cool team sport. I kind of enjoyed team sports in that sense because swimming is kind of lonely. You're just in the water by yourself, grinding and grinding. So I enjoyed basketball, built a lot of friendships. And that was kind of, I didn't really hold any grudge against the decision or wasn't too upset about it actually, just a little bit frustrated.
Okay. And I think those were, early formative years of, pursuing excellence and what it means to operate at a high level. As you furthered that, I think, you went to SMU, you did a couple of early startups. One of the few things that caught my mind was, I think in a couple of past interviews you mentioned, you started hearing about some of your friends who were doing quite well in life, right? Be it in banking, be it in real estate. And I think you shared about sometimes when some of your finance colleagues share, "Oh, I'm working in this bank," you always had a bit of imposter syndrome. How big was a driver in terms of money to you back then?
So I came from SMU, and SMU is kind of an environment where it's either banking or consulting, mostly, right? Or some large corporate service that you go for and you climb up the corporate ladder. And I realized that I firstly wasn't able to compete with my peers in school. They were all a lot smarter. Finance-wise, I literally sat next to finance geniuses. Like they were so damn good with their Excel sheets. They knew what they were doing. And I was always the struggling student next to them trying to keep up. So I got into real estate and in uni because I wanted to hedge my risk financially against them. And I realized that I was not going to make money doing a corporate job because I was not very good at kind of following the same path as everybody else. So I needed a different path for myself in uni, and I wanted to go for exchange, and I didn't want to ask my mom for money, right? So I was like, hey, real estate boom, let's go into real estate. So in the 3.5, 4 years I did it, we made decent money as students, we meaning my ex-partner and I, and we were able to maybe taste a little bit of money in that sense at a young age. And so when you receive your first, I remember my first commission payout was probably something like 35K, something like
That's
that at 21 years old, right? That's a lot of money. And people were like, how are you going to spend it, right? And I realized I have no interest in buying things. I have no interest in showing off to people. I realized like just personally, it doesn't resonate with me. Like I wouldn't buy a Hermes belt, which is a thing that a lot of people like to do and then post on Facebook back then and show off, or a Rolex, right? And I realized like that it really doesn't interest me. So I had a bit of money, and the natural thing I did as a person who doesn't like to spend money, I don't party, I don't go out that much, I don't buy things. So I was like, what should I do? So I should save it, right? So I put it all in Apple stock. And I realized like, okay, after working in the industry for 3-4 years, I was pretty good at it. Like I was able to connect with people. I learned the skill of connecting with people much older than me. I learned the skill of allowing people to trust me. I think people trusted me. I learned the skill of being able to take no for rejection, get rejected time and time again. I remember there was one house that was really hard to sell in the heart of Somerset. I probably did 30, 40 viewings. And the owner was just like, you know what, just try your best, I don't expect to sell it. It's down market. And one day, one guy walks in. I was rejected 30, 40 times. I had very little hope. This guy walks in, 1 minute, twirls in the unit, boom, pays cash for it.
No way.
And it was like a $7 million apartment. And I was
Wow.
like, what? All that work sold in 1 minute. And I just couldn't believe it. So I think it taught me this idea that actually success is sometimes just kind of showing up. It's just kind of being ready for it, just doing the work, even though it looks bleak. Odds are against you in the market, but just showing up, you never know what will happen. So that was kind of really good lessons for me. I tasted the commissions, but I realized it didn't matter. And I was really struggling when the market took a hit in 2013. The year I was graduating also, first stamp duty policies came out. They were trying to cool the market. A lot of my buyers just left the market. And I focused on rentals. I remember it was, first half 2013. Because I had so many tenants that I had placed in these beautiful apartments across Singapore, I had become friends with many of them, personal friends. Many of them were senior VPs. And I remember I was serving this company that was headquartered in New York, shifting their entire headquarters to Singapore. And I had befriended the CEO, and he was like, dude, you did such a great job for me and my family when we came to Singapore. Can you personally tour 10 of my SVPs who are coming to
Wow.
Singapore for the first time? I want you to show them the city. I want you to take them around, enjoy the food. I want you to bring them to the schools and let them know what life in Singapore is going to be like just like what you did for me. And the company will pay you a day rate, and you get to keep the commissions after you close. And obviously, these are SVPs, listed company in the US. And I didn't have a car, so I rented a Toyota Estima, big company, big car, toured all these executives around, placed them in rentals, and befriended many of them actually. But the end of placing all of them, I asked myself, like, why did I go through a rigorous economics degree to become some sort of a glorified tour guide? Nothing wrong, paid very well. The day rate was some ridiculous amount, like $1,000 a day just to tour them. Took me about 3-4 days to place an executive, plus commissions. Their average rental was about 10K to 15K per unit. So if I co-broke that, half of it comes to me. So it was really lucrative. But
Wow.
at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just kind of a glorified tour guide. Like, again, I fall back onto I connect with people. I get people to trust me, and I can really build relationships with people very quickly. But maybe the medium of this delivery of being an agent was not intellectually stimulating enough for me. I felt like I wasn't creating enough impact in the world. At the end of the day, this family is happy. They feel safe and happy in Singapore, settled down, great. I have changed their lives in a small way, but I wasn't doing enough for the world. And for me, the commissions coming in, it really didn't matter. And I realized like money was good, important, useful, but kind of not the most important factor for me as a human being. I think impact was missing for me. And therefore, I wanted to look for something more impactful.
And I read that, at this prime time, you were saying you were serving so many clients, you and your partner decided to give away all the clients. And this is something that I would assume probably printing you a good 5-digit every month, but you decided to give it all away. help me rationalize that in the perspective of someone who's 22, 24. That would be the end state for many people, right? Like, and you chose to just give it out the way. I can't understand how did it come about.
I was inspired by my partner. My partner and I built this business together 4 years in uni. We were same batch, same JC friend, and we went up together. He was the one who quit first. He told me one day, "Hey, this agent business is great. It's a lot of cash, but it's not pushing him intellectually." And he got an offer from GIC to join the real estate team, which instead of buying units, you're buying buildings around the world. And he was like, "I'm going to earn less, but I'm going to learn more." And on top of that, he was thinking about going into theological school to become a pastor. So he sat me down, I remember this, at a cafe, and he was like, "I'm going to give all my clients to you. All. Your income is going to double, triple, and you just take all of it and you run with it, right? And take care of my clients." And I looked at him and I was like, that's inspiring, dude. And I was like, we were at the crossroads of our lives. We were graduating. And I was like, actually, I've been thinking about the same word, impact. And he really inspired me. And I was like, if you're going into GIC, I don't think I can run this alone and I won't enjoy it as much. It was fun as students, right? We were covering each other, learning together. And now I'm a lone ranger. And my boss in the agency was much older. She was like a motherly figure to me. And I was like, I can't imagine graduating, going into an environment where I was working with a lady that felt like my mom. It just felt very uninspiring and not something I wanted to do. So I looked at kind of a lens of risk profile. I was graduating. The world was ahead of me. I had some savings from my work. Even if I had no income for the next 2 years, and if I just kind of lived very simply, $300 a month, $500 a month, I would have enough runway in my savings to kind of figure it out. That was kind of how I thought about it. I had savings. I put it in Apple stock. Apple stock was doing well. Even if I wanted to get married, which was a thing I wanted to do early, I had kind of enough for something simple. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a mortgage. I had cash in bank. So for me, it was like, it's now or never kind of a moment. And that event of my partner leaving first really kind of pushed me off the boat. And I said, okay, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it too. And then the question for me was, what am I going to do? Right? Because he was going to GIC, got a job. And for me, it was like, okay, I wanted to go into startups. I wanted to kind of follow the path of Brian Chesky, Airbnb. I know you worked there before. He was one of those figures, 2013, just starting.
Yep.
I tried out his service and I loved Airbnb. And I wanted to kind of go that route. I wanted to start something. I wanted to join the tech community, join a startup community, and I wanted to kind of dive off this. The analogy I had in my head back then was I was kind of cruising on a yacht, right? Wow, we get commissions, life was good, you didn't have to worry about things. And then I was kind of diving off that yacht into a deep, dark ocean with no safety net, no life vest, and just kind of learning to paddle, just kind of tread water, kind of figure it out in the dark ocean, in the stormy ocean.
Yep.
That was the analogy I had. And the question was, why do that, right? And the analogy I had also was learning to swim in the toughest of seas is going to make you resilient. It's going to make you strong. It's going to teach you things that you won't learn when you're drinking champagne on a yacht. That was literally my analogy. And I couldn't fall back on a safety net. So a lot of people are like, why don't you keep your license? Because that's when the CEA was introduced already. You had to be licensed to be an agent. And I was like, no, if I kept the license and I did a couple of deals here and there, I will always have this safety net that I fall back on. And I didn't want that safety net because I really wanted to succeed as an entrepreneur or learn as an entrepreneur. So I literally did not renew my license, gave all my clients to the next agent that I met, and I just jumped into the deep dark ocean of entrepreneurship.
This yacht was serving champagne and caviar. You decided to jump off, burn the yacht down, and just find a way to float. Like, do you think this is something that came from your upbringing or something? Like, was it comfortable at home? What gave you the luxury to say, I don't even want to find a safety boat first before I jump off. I will do it now, cut off any, secondary paths and just go straight. I'll find a solution. Like, where was this confidence coming from?
I think, yes, I come from a middle class family that is comfortable. So I didn't have the need to kind of provide for my parents, or I didn't have a need to kind of put food on the table for anybody. I was kind of single, and I think a lot of the lessons through maybe my religious faith, through my upbringing, was about creating impact to the world. Like, you have to be somebody that would do something meaningful for the world, right? And I think a lot of it came through the music I was listening to as a kid, right? There's this lyrics from Switchfoot, right? You were meant to live for so much more. And that was kind of my jam when I was a teenager. So always, like, at the back of class, it's like, man, I was meant for more than just calculus. I was meant for more than just this stupid math class, right? And surely life has more to this than just this. And I think being an agent, again, was very comfortable. But I remember co-broking or working with agents that were twice or more than twice my age. And they were kind of doing the same thing that I was already doing. And for me, I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to do this for the next 30 years of my life? And literally do the same thing, get money, sure. But is that it? Is that my life? Completely, I could see the end already. Just kind of going, showing up for viewings, opening doors, touring people around the house. Great, good, comfortable life. But is that for me? And the answer was a very clear no. It was a no. No way in hell you're going to do that, right? Like, I just couldn't envision living my life like that. So for me, I was like, yeah, if that's not what I want in life, I'm clear. I've tried it, got good things out of it, learned a lot. It's time to jump, right? So for me, it was like that safety net that perhaps family, being middle class, it was like, it's okay. You can take risk. Yeah.
And at the time you jumped into startups, so I found Karl's Twitter account, right? In 2013, 2014, you were super active on it. You were going through Jack Ma's pitch deck. You're reading through Hootsuite's CEO's talks. Like, what happened in that formative years of you figuring out what's the next boat to jump on?
Yeah, there was a big startup boom 2012, 2013, kind of early in Singapore, but I would say globally, like, Jack Ma was one of my favorite figures getting into the scene. So I attended every entrepreneurship forum there was, conference around the region. I was just kind of getting inspired. But Jack Ma was like the man, right? And he was dropping all these quotes and dropping a lot of wisdom. And there was one quote I remember. It went something along the lines like, young people often at night think about the 1,000 paths they would walk tomorrow, and then they wake up and they walk the same path as yesterday. And that quote just pushed me off that boat. That quote was like, heck, he's true, right? Because there's this notion of risk and I don't want to fail. And Jack Ma called it out. He called me out. He was like, you want to be like everybody else? Follow the same path as you were taking yesterday because you're too scared to take risks. And so I jumped because of him. And I remember just rewatching that clip over and over again. And he was kind of the man. I was just trying to absorb everything that he was saying. And I think his journey, kind of being a teacher, Hangzhou, with his fellow teachers, and you had all these clips of him standing in front of these old computers, telling his fellow teachers, we're going to build an internet company, we're going to do this. And fast forward to today or last few years, a lot of his fellow teachers were still in the company with him. And I think that philosophy was super inspiring, right? Like, there wasn't anybody who did it like him. He did it his way. Because if you read all the literature from the West, right, it's very different. The philosophies and the value sets are very different from the East. And in this era, in the starting era of my journey, Jack Ma was kind of the only guy you kind of look to. There wasn't TikTok, ByteDance, and all that stuff. So it was like Jack Ma, right? So for me, he was a big inspirational figure. And yes, getting on Twitter, reading as much as I could. I think the analogy I had for myself was just being a sponge. Now that I'm in the ocean, I'm trying to figure things out. I need to learn as much as I can. I need to grow as much as I can. So I went from everything from conferences to, I went for Ruby on Rails coding bootcamp, and I just read a ton of books, articles, everything that I could consume, I was consuming.
Yep. And this led you to your first startup. So what I read is you tried to build your first startup, Televate, yourself. You faced some blockers, so you end up managing to convince your professor to build the first version for you. there's so much things to unpack here because I've, read about it, and there's two key moments that I wanted to jump in. The first was you were sharing about your formula to getting in front of sales executives to sell them Televate solution, how you managed to sneak into a conference, the way you dressed up. I also found a WordPress that you had. You would be sharing tips, like 4 steps tips on how to get in front of people. What should you wear? How do you time it? When to eat your lunch? Like, where do you learn all of these things?
I don't remember where I learned it, but I remember because I had interacted with so many senior execs in these companies because of my real estate job. I realized like they were quite predictable, right? Like corporate guys, quite predictable, right? And now I was trying to sell to corporate guys. I just needed a minute. I just needed a moment in front of them, and I knew that that was my window. And I went into these conferences, and I realized, like, I just observed the movement of people, and I realized like everybody moved in the same way, except for me, because I think I have a bit of ADHD. I can't listen to the speakers on stage. So for me, I was just looking at my target. Like I was like a hunter zooming in on my prey, and I was watching my prey. He was just kind of sitting there listening, and then they would go and pee, and then they'll go and eat lunch, and then they'll go back and sit there. The moment they sit down, right, you cannot pitch them anything because they are fully focused on listening on stage. And the moment they come off stage after they finish speaking, 10 people are going to swarm them. You will never get a chance. And when you get swarmed by 10 people after your speech, you don't actually listen to the people. Yep. You don't know what's going on. So I watched and I learned that actually that's the worst time to talk to a speaker because you're just one out of 10. I want to be 1 out of 1 in a moment where he is not guarded, in a moment he doesn't expect it. I want to leave an impression. So for me, I just looked at that. Coming in, it was difficult because they haven't figured out their bearing. Peeing was a good chance. Washing hands is a bit creepy, but peeing, washing hands, very good chance. I have done this multiple times. Washing hands, kind of go, hey, so-and-so, I want to share something with you. I have an idea to share with you, right? Always works. But your window is about a minute or two. If you go to them during lunch, right after they get food, you are the first person to talk to them after they scoop their last dish into their plate. High chance they'll talk to you also. Right. So I was like, why eat lunch when everybody's eating lunch? You should eat after or before so that your lunch is free and you have to enter a conference knowing exactly who you are there to talk to. You cannot go there and, hi, what do you do? You must go there knowing, hi, I know you, so-and-so. I'm here to pitch you something. So you need to be very, very targeted in your approach because I didn't have money, right? So I was sneaking around all these conferences. And any moment you could get caught or evicted. Yep. So for me, it was like, I need to go in, get the job done, and get out, right? So that was kind of how I thought about it. I kind of learned it myself. There was no books around some things like that. So it was kind of growth hacking in my own way.
No, the reason I brought this example is because I did the exact same thing. And nobody has told me there's no way I could read about it. I remember this fondly. It sounds very creepy saying it, right? But I was at an event. I saw Honda, this Japanese footballer, right? As I'm a big football fan, and everybody was swamping and trying to speak with him. And I was like, I need to find a way to just. And this was even a pitch. I just want to say hi. I saw that he was walking to the washroom. And normally when you go to an event, you don't do like a big business. You just go for a quick one, right? So I timed it. Okay, 20 seconds. He should be done with the urinal. Then I stepped in. And just nice, he was at the wash basin. I stood beside him and just like washed my hand. I'm like, hey, you're here. Then we just started the conversation. We walked out together, then that allowed you to like continue, right? Because everybody has to walk out the washroom together, right? That's the time to chat, right? So I always thought that I was being weird doing this, but reading your story, I was like, wow, someone actually also found this growth hack, right?
I think it's just hustling, I guess, right? Like you need to find a way. You need to find a way because nobody's going to give you answers, yep. Right? And that was the fun part of it, I guess.
And most people hear about the successes and the yes stories that we face. But we all know that there are 99 of them that are no's, right? What made you so comfortable with taking no for an answer?
Yeah, I guess, for me, I wasn't the A student. I wasn't top in class. I had been rejected by so many prospects and deals and just people saying no to me all the time. And so for me, it was like, okay, just kind of move on. You get a no, you get a rejection. You just kind of move on. no big deal, try again. And I think that's maybe one of the issues I have with our education system, because we're trained as Singaporeans to be acing everything. Everything must be A, you kind of get in, you get good grades, everything, you just gotta be successful. But a lot of people don't know how to deal with failure, right? And you hear of these tragedies where kids and young people feel so down when they don't get straight A's, right? Some even go to the extremes of, doing stupid things, right? And for me, that is sad, because in the journey of life, in the journey of building business, there's going to be so many times you will fail, right? And how you deal with failure, I can't remember if it was Eric Ries. I think it was Eric Ries, right? He talks about earning or achieving failure, right? Like failure is an achievement that you must process and you must roll into kind of your system so that you learn how to not fail again. And I think that spoke to me also. Like a lot of people just kind of look at, how to get the right answer to get good grades. But if I fail actually in business building, how do I know what not to do again? That's actually more important than doing it right. So to me, that was kind of something that I just kept in my mind. Like failing is okay, especially when I failed my first company. Failing is okay. Like there's a lot in this that you will take into the next thing. Even though you don't know the next thing, there's a lot in this, and time will be the bearer of all truths here. And that was kind of a big thing that I held on to.
Yeah, I think Jensen Huang also mentioned this before. They was asking him to give advice to startups. He'll say, I hope you guys fail enough, right? So I think that was a very, very big learning hearing from someone like him. And, back in your days at Televate, I think one of the more key milestones was during the data breach times when you guys had to kind of like put the pilot to a halt, right? How big of a quote unquote failure was that for you? Or for you, it was like, this is, another day in the park, like no biggie.
No, that was bad. That was really bad. So yeah, we had started our pilot program helping big enterprises like banks and telcos to run their customer support through our SaaS. And MAS put a halt on all third-party providers that don't carry insurance for data loss and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't even know what that was, to be honest. I just got a message like, hey, we can't go ahead with this. MAS put a clamp down. We got to stop this. So that was the dagger that pierced through our startup's heart. That was the dagger that wrecked it. Obviously, we tried to pivot. We tried to pivot to SMEs. We tried to pivot all we could. But that was the dagger. And for me, obviously, we kept optimistic as much as we can. Like I think entrepreneurs just crazily optimistic. Like it's okay, we'll figure this out.
Yep.
Like we'll try again, right? But for me, after a while, we kind of figured like that was it. That was the dagger, right? Like there was no way out of this. Buying corporate insurance for software was like 2-3 million a year. We had 20,000 in our bank. I was like, how are we going to get 2-3 million just to get insurance, right? Like we need 2-3 million for building our team. But even if we raise 2-3 million, which was a lot, right? Like it's just going to go to insurance. So for me, it was a dead end, after which very quickly we shut it down.
And I think that whole experience led to you going back to school, starting going to internet, meme culture, and who knew that it was the start of the founding of Hepmil Group? Do you think that you're a humorous person?
Now, probably not. I think I lost a lot of it over adulthood, maybe. But when Adrian, my co-founder, and I were in class together in junior college, in uni, life was a lot more carefree, right?
Yep.
And there was no social media. So we were just talking a lot of shit, right? Like we were shit talkers. Like we were talking nonsense half the time in class, just making jokes and cracking jokes and making fun of people. Like we were very mean boys, right? And so I think we were a lot funnier back then, for me at least. My co-founder obviously has taken it to the next level. I'm probably not known as the funny guy today. Definitely not. So yeah, probably faded off over time. But back in the day when, 20 years ago, we were hilarious. I think there were 5 of us. We were hilarious. Yeah.
You mentioned that in the early days, before Hepmil took its form, you were doing t-shirts.
Yeah.
And you fought with Adrian a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, you even swore that I would never do a company with you.
Yeah.
But you still did it. Why?
Yeah, I think we fundamentally saw things very differently, and I think we still do. He saw things very much in a way that I didn't understand. And for me, I realized like I didn't see eye to eye with him on a lot of things. And in our earlier years, perhaps we didn't understand ourselves enough to be comfortable with that. Like we were not self aware enough to understand who we were. We were not self aware enough to know that, differences are okay, that people can complement each other, right? I just kind of felt frustrated all the time. Why doesn't he understand me? Right. And we were 17, 18, trying to sell t-shirts, trying to make like $5, $10 per t-shirt. And it was frustrating because after an entire 12 months, we made $500 split 3 ways. So I was like, what's the point of this? Like, what's the point of doing work with you when we made $150 across 12 months? I was like, over $10 a month, right? Like, what was the point of that? So, yeah, we realized it was better off to be friends because we were very close. And later on, when we decided to do this, we also had been through, a bit more as young adults, and we had learned more about who we were, become a lot more self-aware. And that gave me a little bit more confidence to go, okay, look, here's what we learned in our first company. Here's what we need to avoid, right? Like you need to do your thing, I need to do my thing, and then we need to bring it together. But underlying this relationship, there must be a lot of trust, right? Like there'll be disagreements, we'll see things differently, but know that I always got your back, right? Like know that everything I do is for the betterment of the company and not to sabotage you. And I think in a world that is difficult to find a co-founder you can trust 200%, like we have that trust with each other. Even though we do get frustrated, we do things differently, we see things differently, like we got each other's back, right? And you don't need to know where you are or what you're doing. Like, both of us are trying to hustle for the betterment of the company in our own ways, right? And I think that's kind of how we saw it.
And this is 2013, 2014, where memes, social media didn't really take off, right? I spoke with Ray from 9GAG, right? A very similar industry, very a lot of resemblance. And 9GAG for them was a side hustle. They were trying to apply to YC for another project. And one of the investors was like, hey, what's this website you guys are looking at? Then they're like, oh, this is a 9GAG, something that we do at the site. It has, a few 100,000 monthly visits. And then the investor was like, why are you not building this? Why are you trying to build another startup? So I was trying to put myself in their shoes, and it wasn't obvious to them that 9GAG could be 9GAG where they are today. Was it obvious to you back then that SGAG, Hepmil, media entertainment, monetization in this industry was something that could have been done?
No, not at all. I mean, Ray is a legend in the scene, right? And we basically took his idea, localized it. We loved his memes, right? But the challenge was in an environment like Singapore, where media freedom is not exactly the thing that we enjoy as a country. We were like, hey, we love memes, but we can't just consume UGC memes, right? Like people just get in trouble. So Southeast Asia was kind of different. And a lot of the memes were from the West. So we were like, we have to make our own and put in a filter that is acceptable for it to exist in Singapore. But, as SGAG grew and became what it is today, but it hit a plateau very much in 2018-19, where it was there's just a limit to how much SGAG can grow as a company, as a business. And as a founder, I needed it to be so much more, right? That's when I pitched Adrian the idea of building a group, right? That we have to diversify our business. And we really need to use and leverage the reputation we've built to do other things, right? Which allowed us to launch other businesses in the last couple of years. And that changed the course of our business. But it was very much not apparent at all that we would pivot this way. And I think that was a good start, but we were not aware of what we will get ourselves into very much. So it's kind of the art of the pivot, right? Like pivoting, finding your next thing, and just kind of watching the business transform over the years. It was something we had to intentionally do.
This, I think you're referring to the creator network, which I believe right now is the main revenue driver, 60-70%. And what intrigues me is in the first 3 years when you guys were doing memes, and I think you said it had almost the same number of views as Straits Times. Even till then, it wasn't obvious to you that that alone could have been a business, you could monetize it. You all were doing deals, I think, brand deals with Scoot. They would give like 20K for you to spend. And you're saying even till then, like it wasn't obvious to you that you could scale it into a large company?
We saw traction and we just kept pushing, kind of like, okay, let's take the next deal, hire the next person. And we were growing aggressively in the early years. And so by the time we kind of reached 2018, 19, we were like 40, 50 people. It was super sizable in our opinions already. But the revenues were just not at a level that maybe is both a blessing and a curse as an entrepreneur. It's never enough, right? It's never enough. Like you hit this milestone, it's like, okay, what's next? And that's probably my curse that I bear, right? That how do I get 10x? Now I can't get 10x from this. So for me, that was kind of how I saw it. Obviously, getting to that point, it was great and good, but I was like, okay, what's next? How do we 10x it? And that required us to kind of build the next thing that gave us a lot more scalability in the business model. And we learned a lot about the business model, right? Where production, it was just very challenging to scale up. It was also very challenging for the business model to replicate into the region successfully because, yeah, being very influential in a foreign market, you get a lot of eyeballs on you as a foreign owner of media. So we didn't want to go down that path. And we were not politically woke. We're not interested in politics at all. So I had no interest in anybody's politics. It's their business, not mine. And for me, I just wanted to build a business. And I realized like building a content business overseas that was significant is very high risk. So I had to pivot our overseas expansion to something a lot less risky, something a lot more sort of back end empowering people rather than taking the limelight. Yeah. So that was kind of how we thought about it.
And as the business scaled, I think, it grew to 50, 100 people. And for the first time, people were asking you about what's my career path, what's my career ladder, right? And you shared that, this is kind of like the first time that you were operating at that scale. So two things interest me. Like one, you realized that you had to seek new knowledge. Two, you then had to relearn and act on it. So you actually hired an executive coach, right?
Yeah.
How was that in terms of knowing that I needed some new source of knowledge, and two, relearning and operating in a whole different way? You shared this affects the way you dress, this affects the way you speak. Like, how was that rebirth or V2 of Karl? Like,
Good point. For me, it was like I remember coming to work and I really didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was just lost, just surfing the internet, looking around the room and like, what's everybody doing? What am I supposed to do today? And then it dawned on me, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Actually, I was like, what's my job scope, right? For myself. And then I realized, crap, I'm lost. I'm a bit lost. And we're very lucky we had a very great investor from day one. He was kind of a mentor figure to us. And I called him, I was like, I think we need to talk. Like, I need a bit of guidance on actually what I'm supposed to do because I've never worked in a corporate setting before. So what is the CEO's job? I didn't really know. I was just kind of doing what I thought it was right to do. But a lot of times I would go down into this rabbit hole of maybe buying new office furniture or looking for telephone booths, which I really enjoy doing. And I thought I was being productive because nobody was really guiding me on what I was supposed to do. So I think it stemmed from a sense of frustration. Like I felt like I was wasting a lot of time. I felt like I wasn't being productive, and I felt like I wasn't being a good leader to my people. So I think these were the three motivations. And then getting coached, I'm a very skeptical person. I'm also a very bad follower, right? Just kind of a rebel, don't want to follow people. So like to find a good coach, I needed to really click with the person. And I got very lucky because my coach, she came in, she's like this older lady, super experienced, very calm, very sharp, very smart, but doesn't reveal her cards from day one. Like she slowly reveals cards to me. And I'm just mind blown every time I talk to her. And that created a lot of respect for me. Yeah. And I think she was able to push the right buttons. And for me, I became very open. Like it's not easy to get me to open up and be coached by somebody because just kind of a rebel mindset. But for her, she was so damn good. She pressed the right buttons. And I was just so amazed at how she was able to operate that I kind of, okay, you're my shifu, like I'm going to learn from you. And I became very hungry. And I look forward to our weekly sessions where we would spend an hour. She would observe me in meetings. She would observe me at work. And she would give me pointers to think about. She was not very prescriptive. She actually always challenged me to think. And so for me, and it led me to find my own answers, which was kind of what I was looking for, because she was wise enough to know that we were also not trying to fit into a mold. We were trying to build our own versions of what leadership meant for us. And she was able to guide us there. So it was actually a very enjoyable journey.
Mm-hmm.
It was a transformative journey, powerful and impactful journey, which was what we were looking for.
It feels a little bit full circle because the reason why you left real estate was because you felt your manager was decades above you, couldn't connect. But in your own personal growth, you now seek someone who's a bit more stable, a bit more corporate, a bit more authoritative, and this whole journey where you feel okay, I need to take it to the next step, right? Do you feel a lot of imposter syndrome then? Leading a company of 80, 100. Revenue was I think at that time a few single millions already. Do you have a lot of self-doubt then?
Yeah, for sure. I think every entrepreneur has a bit of imposter syndrome. I think even donning the CEO title was something I was very uncomfortable with until later on. So I used to call myself like business director. I didn't want to be a CEO, right? So for me, yeah, definitely a lot of imposter syndrome. But then it also dawned on me, like, if I don't do it, who's going to do it, right? And there's a role to be filled, and people do kind of gravitate towards me being the leader in the company for certain aspects of the business decisions. And naturally I was that person. So instead of just kind of like, oh, I'm not, like, it's not humility. Humility is not necessarily title or donning leadership position, right? Like, I realized there was a need to be a leader, but you could have values that you resonate with as a leader and how you behave and how you operate. But you need to fill the shoes of a leader as a founder, right? And for me, realizing that and stepping up gave me a lot more confidence to adopt the CEO title, to be able to then also coach my people into building the business together. And I think it took me years to get there, but for sure, tons of imposter syndrome, tons of failure, tons of kind of finding your own groove. There's a meme and there's a joke in one of those startup pages that I saw. It's like, oh, your CEO comes in on Monday and changes the entire style and direction of the company because he heard a podcast on Saturday, right? And that was kind of maybe me in the formative years where you're still trying to figure things out, getting inspired, being an open door to absorb as much as you can, and just kind of figuring who you are as a CEO, as a founder.
One thing that, as I was reading about your story, this movie called Yes Man came to mind. How Jim Carrey initially was very closed up, but he just kept saying yes to opportunities, some bad, some good, and ultimately led to a good place. You strike me of someone who really believes in, serendipities, opening doors to opportunities. In fact, what I read is the way you met Jeffrey, one of the key VP and your investors, was also, I was reading a story like, I couldn't understand. You walked up to Brian, who is the CEO of Kip, a successful tech company, to try and like pitch him and talk to him. He was supposed to meet Jeffrey that day. He somehow brought you up, and then Jeffrey said, "Oh, I want to chat with like SGAG folks." This is like Avengers, Doctor Strange shit, man. Like, are you someone that just tries for every opportunity, and has it come to a point where it helps you rationalize about how opportunity actually happens to people?
Yeah, great research. I think, especially in Singapore, I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but for Singapore, I mean, you call it different things, right? But for me, some call it karma, some call it goodwill, some call it kind of just reputation. For me, it was kind of like, it's a small enough environment in Singapore where if you kind of give without expecting to receive, and you just think of it like a game, right? Like, you're just earning a lot of social credit by being kind, doing good, helping people, doing the best you can when you can, and just kind of investing in people, right? You're just like planting a seed of goodwill in different places. And you don't even, it might not take a lot. It might be buying somebody a drink, giving somebody some advice, or just investing in people. And over time, because it's such a small country, a lot of these little seedlings become trees, and these trees come back to give you oxygen, and you kind of benefit from it, right? Others, they find their own paths, and you didn't even know you planted that tree. But for me, I think that's a really great way to analogize how I see it, where you never know what will come out of it. Be open to opportunities, do good, do well, try your best to help others, and you kind of receive in that. And a lot of our, not just investor relations, but our clients are like that, where, hey, when they were starting out as marketing execs, yeah, we'll help you. It's okay. We'll help you. Now they are CMOs of large companies and they were like, hey, I never forgot what you did when I was in my career. And I think that's how our business was built because I realized a lot of people built very transactional businesses. I'm trying to earn an extra $100 off you by cheating you, by lying to you, by just shortchanging you. But in a small city and environment like Singapore, where we're all trying to build Singapore up at the end of the day, there's so much goodwill that we can exchange and help by helping each other as entrepreneurs. And I think that's the beauty of our country. So that's kind of how I see it. You never know. Just do good. And yeah, Jeff has been a pillar in our company. And we have a lot of such stories also in employees. And like we just hired this person. We've known her for 10 years, just kind of been around the industry. She's done amazing things in the industry. She just joined us yesterday after a decade-long career in tech, been through the big ranks of big tech companies. Now she's coming to join us after 10 years. And we met through some friends in a random place 10 years ago. And I think that's Singapore. That's the fun of Singapore. American friend always calls Singapore like a very large college campus where you can just kind of meet people, do good, cool things together and build it up together.
You don't strike me as someone who's a natural extrovert. So this concept of planting seeds, being acceptable to, hearing no, stalking people in the washroom, was it very comfortable for you to do it? Or is just something that you felt, okay, this is something that needs to be done. I have to get used to being comfortable. Like, was it natural to you?
Yeah. Actually, I always have this debate, right? Like with friends, am I introvert or extrovert? Actually, before I started the company, I was probably an extrovert. Really enjoy hanging out with people, talking, and just spending hours chatting. I like people. I really like people, but I think I talk so much in my job that now after my work, I don't want to talk anymore because I'm just talking Monday to Friday, nonstop, morning till night. So when I'm out of work, I'm just exhausted. But I do enjoy talking to people. It does come naturally to me. I realized this when I was in SMU actually, where we had a corporate communications 101 public speaking class. You had to do like I think 7-8 minute pitch without script in front of the class. And that was the course that most people were freaking out. They were shaking, they were nervous, no scripts allowed. And I didn't realize I could public speak to large groups or speak to people without scripts naturally. I realized like that was a gift I never knew I had because I was just always doing real estate one-on-one, right? I never had to do like 1-on-100, 1-on-50. And kind of doing that class, I went up, I just spoke naturally. I was able to deliver my speech, got my first A+ ever and one of my few A+ in school. And then my group mates were like, dude, that was sick. Like, how do you do it? And I realized like it came so naturally for me. I don't get nervous. I don't need scripts. I just have some points in my head and I can just speak naturally. And then I realized like, hey, that was maybe one of my superpowers because, in startups, it's like, what's your superpower? Yeah. How do you play as a team player? And I realized this was one of my superpowers. So for my team, it's like any big convention, conference, let me do it because I don't need to prep for it. And it's easy for me, but I cannot do Excel sheets. I don't like doing slides. I cannot do those kind of things where you need me to sit there and do something for an extended period of focus. I cannot. But you want me to speak? Yeah, easy. I'll do it. So we kind of split up our roles within the core team, and I realized that was my gift and my superpower to the team.
We talk a lot about, accepting failures and getting failures in life, in work. There's one time where I really want to bring up was, you all were doing an M&A deal. And there was like a 6 months due. The end of it, like the term sheet was way off from where you guys were. You guys said you weren't even in the mood of saying no, just like walked out, right? How bad of a quote unquote failure or disappointment was that for you?
Once we left the boardroom, went back to my office, I remember going back to one of the meeting rooms. I called my two early employees whom we were very close to, sat them down, and I was like, dude, the deal's off. It's not happening. We got screwed over, rug pulled. Shit, I'm sorry. I just told them I'm sorry. And they looked at me and they were like, why are you sorry? Like, it doesn't matter for us, right? Like, we're in this for the long. We're here to build. And if there's no deal, then we'll find something else. We'll keep going. And they've been there for me through these milestones, like not just my co-founder, but my early employees. And they really helped me to kind of go, hey, actually, it's not as bad as we think. But it was distracting. I think the no deal scenario made me realize we had spent 6 months courting, dating, opening up our books for nothing, right? And that caused a lot of distractions because naturally as a founder, you're like, oh yeah, job's done. What am I going to do with the money? Going to buy a vineyard, going to buy surf. I don't know. Like there's surely some thoughts like that, right? But then it was a great lesson, right? Like actually, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? Like don't have such expectations. So since then, we've not entertained a single deal. We've not done any sort of due deal with anybody. We just kind of super skeptical with all deals, which I think was a very key lesson. Not like wide-eyed, like, yeah, let's sell, let's do a deal. Right now it's like no. Unless you're serious, no. No. Even if you're serious, no. Right. So it's just no all the way. And we kind of really need to keep focused. We also don't tell the team as early, right? If there's a deal on the table, like we don't want to distract people. Right? Because we're just humans after all. There's always this, oh my goodness, daydreaming portion of humans where you're like, what if this, what if that? But now it's like, no, it's not going to happen. There's no exit. Let's just keep working. So we changed the way that we look at ourselves.
And this year is kind of the official 10-year anniversary of Hepmil Media. You've entertained M&A deals along the way. I think you did acquisitions as well. How does your perspective change after 10 years in terms of company building? What's other growth levers? How do you think about culture? What of your perspective as a founder changed after 10 years doing this?
Yeah, so much has changed. I think the first few years was like, hey, let's sprint, let's give it a good run, and then let's sell it and figure it out. And then at the midpoint, it was like, oh wow, like this is a lot bigger than we thought it could be. And this could really be something huge. Now we still kind of have that kind of the meetings and discussions where we bring on a lot of great talent that we invite to join the leadership. And when they bring ideas to the table that could really alter the course into the next couple of years, where we go 10x from where we are now, it's like, whoa, like that could be a game-changing idea. And what if we built it that way? Or what if we could achieve that? So the what if question together as a core team is very interesting because we can't see ourselves doing other things. And I think we always, during, when times when we're a little bit more relaxed, we always say like, hey, it's very hard to replicate this, right? Like even for us as founders, to do the next thing and to do it with a group of people that stick with you for 9-10 years, I don't know if I have another run like that, right? And so for us, it's like, hey, since we're together, let's keep going. You want to keep going? And we have a lot of these conversations. Well, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's try. Let's figure it out. And yeah, I think that's the fun part for us. We are still in that kind of situation where we have ideas we want to build, and we talk to the core teams like, do you want to do this with us? You want to keep going? How do you want to think about this? So I think that drives me personally, where at the end of the day, 10 years on, it's the people, right? Like it's me being accountable to people I pitched on day one. Hey, come join me. It's going to be all right. We're going to do this. And when we look back, we checked off all the boxes, right? After 10 years, we checked off everything and kind of went, yeah, we honored our pitch. We did it well. We did it right. And it's nice to see our colleagues, teammates moving on in life, also transiting, being able to buy their first car, house, get married, kids, go through the milestones while working here. I think that's a very meaningful journey. It's not just founders getting rich, me driving a Ferrari and all of them are, on intern salary, right? Like I think we wanted to really build a sustainable business. And I think that is kind of what drives us at the end of the day, where if more and more people can come on this mission and we do well together and share in this journey and build our lives and careers around this for however long you want, I think that's quite a meaningful experience.
I can resonate with that a little bit because I remember one of our first few early employees, over lunch, they would tell me, oh yeah, I'm preparing to save up for my BTO. That's when it hits you that, shit, the salary that you're giving actually is, contributing to someone's home,
Absolutely.
someone's future family. So the responsibilities are not just putting money on the table, but this is something that is a lever for their family planning and all that, right? So I think that was personally for me, my moment where I realized, okay, like shit got real. One question which I believe you may have been asked many times is scalability. Content, especially humor and entertainment, right? If you can think about horror, maybe in my limited knowledge, it seems a little bit easier to scale. But comedy is something that's really, really difficult. You need to have a lot of context. I spent some years at Grab. So we've learned that Southeast Asia is 9 markets. It's not one market, right? What do you think are the variabilities for you in scaling a media company in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I think we saw that content has been around for ever, since human civilization. Comedy has been around for a long time. If we go back to maybe Shakespearean times, where in Shakespeare's plays, there's always a jest, a guy talking shit, having fun, not being serious when people are, speaking in funny English. Some idiot is there, right? So we're like, there's always an idiot standing around talking shit. And comedy is kind of a reaction that everybody welcomes, no matter how powerful you are or how important you are, prime minister or big time CEO. Like laughing or telling a joke, sharing a joke, laughing at something stupid is something that maybe is in human nature.
Yeah.
And so it's a good entry point, I would say. I don't think comedy is a great business to be in. It's a good starting point. I think that's how we thought about it and rationalized it. Like we built our first pillar around comedy. But to get to the next pillar of scaling the business, we have to shed and move across verticals, right? Which was difficult for us because people always knew us as the funny guys. But to get deals in beauty, in fashion, in tech, in finance, right? Like we had to work with people that are not funny. And we realized that at the end of the day, some of the lessons around building comedy content, it's transferable. It's very much the same hook, the same punchline. How do you apply that across other verticals? And so we spent 2020 to 2021 kind of figuring that out. And I would say today we have managed to kind of move beyond comedy where, yeah, some of the principles hold true. Scaling up as a full-time content creator is just really hard to begin with. And we've done it through comedy. We've done it at scale. Now we can help you do it as an independent creator. And that was kind of our thesis around building our next business, where, yeah, we have all these transferable knowledge, skill sets that we can now help you and trust us because we have reputation.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of seen in some areas like the OG of social media, OG of viral content. And that is always a door opener for us. So for us, we see it as a stepping stone. Definitely not the end all, but the comedy content, I mean, even till today, when we watch a piece from one of our teams that's just wacky, it's just completely nuts, we all stop our meetings, we watch it and we laugh together. And I think that's always a fun part of the business for us.
I usually like to end the show with a question that pulls us back to, the person in the seat, Karl. If you take time back to when Televate was kind of like the lowest point, the data breach issue when regulations came in and you knew that you had to close it off, right? Now looking back, you could tell that, 25, 26-year-old Karl, and this is before any of Hepmil even started, right? What would you say to that little young boy still in university?
I think the lowest point was the day that my co-founder and I decided mutually that this is the end. Let's call it quits and let's move on. And two guys deciding to break up as co-founders was like, yeah, cool. Hang up the phone. Boom. I just started crying uncontrollably. And I'm not an emotional person. Yeah. So I just couldn't control my emotions. It was my first very, very much failure as a CEO, as a co-founder of a startup. And I just cried. And I remember pep talking myself, it'll be fine, right? Like, you got this, it's going to get better, it's going to be okay, right? And I think talking to myself back then, it'll be like, yeah, it is okay. Like, you are definitely more than fine, right? Like, keep your head up, keep going, keep trying, and keep that optimism, right? I think I was on the right track, maybe an affirmation like, it's okay. It's okay to express your emotions, it's okay to fail, but just keep trying, right? I think just kind of having that assurance. I think in my journey, I've always looked for maybe a figure, a mentor that would kind of tell me it's okay. Like, this is the right track. And in life, I realized I didn't have that figure, which maybe in my search for mentorship, I was always looking for somebody to go, it's going to be okay, right? You're on the right track. And I would definitely say that to myself.
And at that time, Jack Ma was that figure in the early years. Now looking for the next 10 years, who's that figure?
I think Jeff has played that figure for us, our first investor. It's been a long time. We have to repay his investments soon. But he has definitely played that figure for us in the past 8 years plus, going to 10 or so. And, when we run into real big trouble, real sort of knots in our business, he's the first guy we call, kind of like, hey, this is happening. Do you have a minute? Can you walk me through this? What do you think? And he taught us this value that you must always have an opinion as a leader, even though you might not be sure of an answer. You must always always have an opinion. From day one, he taught us that. So he always has opinions, right? Even though sometimes maybe he doesn't know the full context or doesn't know the answer, he serves as a reassurance and a kind of a mentor figure to kind of go, okay, yeah, do this, agree. Sometimes you just kind of need that. And that's also shaped the way that we lead our business. I lead my business, where sometimes you just want to be there for your leaders and kind of go, yeah, that's fine. Go with it. I back you up. I'm here to back you up, right? And I think that's a very powerful statement to look for.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being so vulnerable, taking us back to the years. And I really personally enjoyed this whole interview. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.